Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps. Here's your host, Jacob Wells.
Welcome to Latte with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Jacob Wells, and today I'm so excited because we have a great episode for you. We're going to be talking with Peter Mcglynn, an attorney at Bernkopf Goodman, about construction, malpractice, commercial, and bankruptcy cases. So here's our guest, Peter Mcglynn. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jacob. It's a pleasure. Hope you're well and safe.
Thanks so much for spending some of your time with us today. I got to ask you, since the show is called Latte with the Lawyer, before we get into any of the law-related stuff, what's your favorite type of coffee or morning drink of choice that gets you fired up in the morning?
A medium Starbucks Americano with hot milk.
All right.
All right. Nothing too fancy, but definitely strong enough to get me going in the morning.
Got it. Love it. So before we get into the episode, can you just give our viewers a bit of an overview of who you are?
I've been practicing thank you, Jacob. I've been practicing trial law for about 46 years in Boston, but my practice has been national as well. I've tried cases in, I think, 23 different jurisdictions, primarily construction and real estate law, but other commercial cases as well. I've tried to verdict in excess of about 150, 175 cases over that 46-year time period. My firm is in Boston. We have about 25 lawyers. I'm been doing this now for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. So take us back 46 years ago when you were, in college, trying to figure out what you wanted to do with your life. How did you become interested in law?
Well, I always wanted to become interested in the practice of law. Things have changed now. I mean, more people are going into financial services and investment banking, at least around here. Mm-hmm. And fewer and fewer people are entering the practice of law, at least as we know it. There are lots of people out there with law degrees, and that makes them qualified to do a lot of different things, not just necessarily practicing law, but it has evolved and it's changed. A lot of things that we did 46 years ago are now outsourced throughout all parts of the world. There are, of course, more challenges with what we do these days, especially during this pandemic. We've been able to, I think, adjust. Even, let's call them senior attorneys like me. These media that we're on today, for example, Zoom. That's the way we are conducting business now in the trial world.
When you say you're outsourcing a lot of things today, what does that mean exactly? What are you guys outsourcing?
A lot of legal research, deposition summaries, document management is the biggest thing now, especially. One thing we really didn't have 46 years ago was ESI, electronically stored information. We barely had any computers at that time. So now that's become a cottage industry of itself in just about any litigation. So consequently, to do that in-house now, it would cost a client an enormous amount of money. So a lot of that is outsourced. We want to make sure that the people are properly certified, that they're doing the appropriate extractions and monitoring and reviewing. And a lot of that is done by these specialty firms, both in this country and in India and Indonesia, primarily. Those are a lot of the places that we are dealing with this type of this end of the practice.
Right. No, it's definitely interesting to see how things have changed over your extensive career. How have things changed over the 46 years? Where do you see the industry going in the future with technology advancing?
Well, I think that there are going to be other areas, other practice areas that are going to change perhaps more radically than what I do. Right? I don't think that technology at this point is going to supplant lawyers getting up in front of a judge or a jury and arguing their case or trying the case. A
Right.
lot of it now, of course, is done, uh, driven by the pandemic through WebEx and GoToMeeting and Zoom, of course, but it's still the same. You've got to present arguments, and I think the bigger challenge that really was not that significant 46 years ago was bringing the younger attorneys, the younger practitioners into court and getting them experienced in standing
Mm-hmm.
up and talking to a judge and addressing a jury. There are fewer and fewer opportunities to do that. It's even fewer so now when you're talking about live performances in front of a judge or a jury as opposed to Zoom.
Right. That's actually something that I find really interesting is the performative aspect of getting up in front of a jury and, you know, explaining the case. So is there anything that you're interested in aside from law that you think has helped you become an effective trial attorney, an effective communicator?
Well, number one, practice. I started this 46 years ago, and it was really cold immersion, cold water immersion back then. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I think within 3 or 4 weeks after I had joined this firm, right out of law school, I hadn't even gotten the results of the bar exam, where I had my mentor at that time, a gentleman by the name of Jim Myers, passed away recently, regrettably, but he had me come over and address 500 lawyers over in the Ames courtroom at Harvard Law School. This is
Wow.
a young kid, 25 years old.
Yeah.
To say the least, I was nervous, but I got through it. And but it was a good experience, and it was really something that told me that the best experience is to do it rather than just review it or learn it from a book. And that's really how I got started. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I've stressed with both my colleagues and young associates and anybody else who's willing to listen to me, and that is, if this is the type of practice that you want to be involved in, get yourself out in the public, get speaking engagements, do seminars, get yourself out there
Mm-hmm.
and get yourself comfortable addressing people, addressing audiences. It's, believe me,
Mm-hmm.
even today after 46 years of trying cases in front of judges and juries, I still get nervous. But
Yeah.
at least I've been able to overcome those nerves, and it kind of gets you psyched up like before a football game.
Right.
But I still get nervous, and people should not be afraid of the fact that they will get nervous. It's just natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting analogy, and I think about the same thing. What you said, getting psyched up for a football game. It's like you get anxious before a football game or going on a roller coaster or something, but that is like excitement. It's a positive anxiety. So if you can reframe your anxiety in a different way, like that, you know that those feelings are more positive, and you know.
You have to understand that that's going to be the case.
Right.
So embrace it as opposed to walking away from it.
Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about being a trial attorney and communicating with the jury, was there a specific case over your career that was really memorable and was an exciting case to be a part of?
I know you would ask me about that, and I had to think about it for a while because I've tried a lot of cases, but one that came to mind wasn't the largest, it wasn't the most sensational, it wasn't the most newsworthy, but all these years later, it still kind of tugs at my heartstrings. It was back, I think, in 1991, and another attorney had referred the case to me. This client, an individual, had an attorney who handled the case perhaps less than satisfactorily. So I took it over literally within about 6 months of the trial date to complete the discovery and get the case ready for trial.
Mm-hmm.
The client was a very successful real estate broker, a decorated Korea War veteran. He was the number one broker in multiple offices of this large real estate firm. In fact, he was so successful, he became a 14% shareholder in the company. But he was also an alcoholic, a gross, what they call in the law, a gross and confirmed alcoholic. Been in and out of a number of sanitaria. His alcoholism precipitated his divorce and his estrangement from his girlfriend. And ultimately, while he was at a clinic sponsored by his employer to go dry out,
Mm-hmm.
they fired him. And for cause, obviously, they had well-documented incidents of his less than business-like behavior, intoxicated in the company. But he was very successful, a so-called functioning alcoholic. His stockholder agreement said, "We get to buy your stock back at the company's book value, an undefined term in the stockholders agreement." And so they said, "Our company has a negative net worth of some $1 million, and therefore, here's a check for $1, which is more than the book value, and that's what you're going to get." So ultimately, he filed suit. Prior counsel was unsuccessful in keeping most of the counts in the complaint alive. There was one count left. Wrongful termination had been dismissed, but the one count that was left was violation of the shareholder agreement. I agreed to take the case on. It was a lengthy trial, and two and a half weeks here in Boston in front of a jury. It was a young jury, which was not typical of the jury makeup at that time. It was a tough case. The judge didn't like our case, and they tried to get my expert witness tossed a number of times. We managed to keep him in there, but after 2.5 weeks, the jury came back after about 2 hours and literally gave us right down to the penny what we were asking for. As a matter of fact, I had asked the judge, I asked our expert witness at the time to calculate the amount of money that he would be entitled to. And I said, "What is 14% of X?" I forget the exact amount. And the judge objected and said, the jury could figure that out themselves. Well, guess what? They did, and they came really right down to the penny what we were looking for. So, but unfortunately, there's more to the story. But one of the things that always struck me about that case, that never happened, Jacob, before or after, is we packed up our bags and went out in the mezzanine of the old courthouse. And the entire jury, all 14 of them, were waiting for us, waiting for me, and they gave us a standing ovation.
Wow.
It never happened before. I doubt that it'll ever happen again for the remaining years that I have to practice. But the point is, the judge still didn't like our expert. He nullified the jury verdict and ordered us on for a new trial. We tried the case about 6 months later. I had to get a different expert, and the jury came back, I think, within $50,000 of the original verdict. And that time, the verdict stuck. We ultimately settled the case on appeal. Unfortunately, that happy note that has to end with a sad note, and that is that the client contracted cancer about 2 years later and died shortly thereafter. So unfortunately, he was never able to really enjoy the benefits of all of those years of hard work and labor and the money that ultimately he received for his settlement. That's the case that I'll always remember for a whole host of reasons. But there were lots of Shakespearean twists and turns in the case, and I shared a few of them with you.
Yeah, I think that when you were describing the standing ovation aspect of it, that you can get a clear visual. It's like straight out of a movie. It's so surreal. I mean, that's hard to forget something like that, I feel like.
It's part of this is this business. A lot of it's strategy. I knew that the other side was licking their chops to get the client on the stand, and he had to testify. Obviously, he had to tell the story, but they were going to cross-examine him all of the drunken displays and the obnoxious behavior and all that, which of course is all true.
Right.
But I said, let's get him out there first. I put him on the stand as my first witness. And I took the jury through his time from decorated Korea War veteran through his achievement of being the #1 broker in this firm with, I think, 75 or 79 offices. The point that we got to his alcoholism, he told them candidly his story. In terms of his destroyed marriage, his estrangement from his kids. One thing I've always remembered and I brought up in discussions ever since then is he told the jury about what he described as the alcoholic's cure. In other words, it's never his problem, it's never the alcohol. So he moved a lot. He moved from town to town because that was the problem. That was the location. That was the reason that he had because of alcoholism. But I saw several of the female jurors literally were crying as I taking him through this rather unfortunate and unpleasant journey that he had, and really the cross-examination of him, which we were really terrified about, turned out to be pretty neutral. So that was the case. He was a great guy to work with, and I'm sorry that he wasn't around long enough to realize the fruits of his labors and my labor.
Well, that was a really exciting story, and I'm really glad that you shared it with us. If there's anybody who's watching this that was really inspired by that case or anything that you were talking about, what's the best way to find you online to get in touch, learn more about you?
Well, the name of my firm is Bernkopf Goodman, LLP. We're in Boston, over in the Seaport District, for those who are familiar with Boston, overlooking the harbor. But my telephone number is 617-790-3490. And my light just went out.
All right.
Yeah. But obviously, Jacob, feel free to reach out, and this was fun, and I really enjoyed meeting you and working with you on this particular task.
Likewise, thanks so much for spending some of your time with us today. This has been Jacob Wells for Latte with a Lawyer. I want to thank Peter Mcglynn of Bernkopf Goodman again for joining us today, and thank you to our sponsor, Motion Track with a K. Without a K, sorry, that uses artificial intelligence and mobile app audiences to economically and quickly gather focus group research and data for trials and mediations. Thanks, Peter.
Jacob, thank you. Stay well, stay safe.
All right, take care.
Thank you.